The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the Eastern Shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. This episode is sponsored by Paint Out West, a virtual painting workshop conducted by Chris Kolupski. Paint along with Chris throughout October from the comfort of your own home. Visit chriskolupski.com to sign up. That's ChrisKolupski.com.
Welcome to the Plein Air Easton Podcast, everyone. I'm Tim Wagon here with Jess Bellis.
Hey.
And Jess, we got some news, some breaking news.
I know. We've got a brand new sponsor who is helping us underwrite the costs associated with this podcast. And it is such a cool event. It's called Paint Out West.
Yes.
And
really
it is
cool.
a virtual painting workshop with this fabulous artist and teacher named Chris Kolupski. And I love this concept. We talked to him briefly.
Yeah, he's got a great idea.
Yeah, and so what he is going to do is he is going to go out west and travel to some of the most iconic national parks out there. The Colorado National Monument, Arches National Park, Canyonland, Zion, Monument Valley. And what he is going to do is he is going to paint, basically do a demo, but walk you step by step through a painting.
Right. I think that's the cool thing. I think is like, because, especially for people who are learning, he's actually going to, in this broadcast, start from showing you how to mix the paint, which really got me interested because he's every step, how much paint he's using to make this color, and go from there to a finished painting.
Yeah, and so the first one that he's going to do, which is going to be at the Colorado National Monument, it's going to be a Zoom one where you can interact with him while he's doing it. He's going to send you a photograph of what he's painting, and basically he's hoping that you can paint right along with him.
Right, paint right along with him. So he's also going to make a video of it, so there'll be 5 classes that you can. So if you don't get it live, or he wants you to tune in live, you can get the classes later and order those whole classes.
Yeah.
For each place that he goes, and
he'll provide you with feedback on your painting if you send him a picture at the end. So it just is a really cool way to. I know that the national parks are really crowded. Everybody wants to go and soak in that nature, and so you can travel there with him. I just think this is a cool thing, and we were talking to him. A real innovation that has come out of COVID, really, like this online teaching, which allows you to be present and paint these places from anywhere.
Right. It's Paint Out West. It's Chris Kolupski.
Chris Kolupski.
Check his
last name
page.
Is spelled KOLUPISKI.com. That's Chris, CHRIS. Thanks, Chris, for helping us out with this podcast. We hope to have you on as a guest sometime soon. But today in the studio, we had just a really fabulous painter and somebody who just has such calming, light energy, and that is our friend Sara Linda Poly.
I think it was a really good interview. I really have to say, I really enjoyed it. I know you kept intention was a big part of that interview, but her story is just interesting, and she tells it really well, I think.
No, I think that if you're somebody who, the advice that she really gives about surrounding yourself with people and art, staying focused and working on, painting and perfecting the things that feed you. I just think she just has such great positive energy. She always wins these best use of light, and people talk about how she paints those sunrises and sunsets, and it is so dovetails with her personality and energy. It's like she is one of her paintings.
Right. I thought it was, and I loved her voice in my headphones. She's got a great sounding voice. You're getting ready to, this is Plein Air Easton Podcast with Sara Linda Poly, and don't forget Chris Kolupski, Paint Out West. Thanks, Chris. Check his website out. Welcome, everyone, to the Plein Air Easton Podcast. I'm Tim Wagon, here with Jessica Bellis, and today's guest is, well, we don't know her name, really, Jess.
I know, we just had this conversation. I think that her name is Sara Linda Poly, but...
I think her name is Sara Linda Poly.
I know it's very complicated. What percentage of the population mispronounces your name?
A lot.
Like 50%?
Yeah.
Higher?
Yeah, probably.
But you would like to be just called Sara.
Yeah, Sarah's fine. And some people actually call me Poly. How weird is that?
That's very weird. But like, then do you really have to correct them, or you just like flow with it at this point? It's like it's a battle you can't fight.
Yeah.
Well, so Sara, let's clear it up right now for the internets, the interwebs. What is your name, so everyone knows how to say it correctly?
Sara Linda, which is my given name at birth, Poly, which is my husband's name.
So wait, but Linda is just your middle name, or it was your first name?
Yeah, it's my first name. It's really my first name.
So your real name is Linda Sara Poly, or
No.
Sara has nothing to do with your
Sarah
name.
is made up.
This is why people are confused.
I take it. This is all Sarah's fault or Linda's fault. No, I take it all back.
I made Sarah up years ago I can't go into the long story of why, but I named myself after Bob Dylan's wife, Sarah, because I
awesome.
loved that piece of music and I needed another name. And I can't go into that much too long.
But
Yeah, so
you
that's-
do
I said
seem like a
Sarah's
Sarah too. Like you have sort of a Sarah energy about you.
A lot of people say that. Yeah.
You're definitely not a Poly. Well, I'm so glad that we've like gotten to clear that up. That is all very fascinating.
I thought so. And just so everyone knows, Sara Linda Poly is a plein air artist. Works around the country in all sorts of plein air events. And Sara,
let's brag on her a little bit more. She's also a Plein Air Easton Grand Prize winner.
Yes,
and there aren't that many of them out
Right.
there in the world, and so that's at least some kind of badge of honor, right?
And I'm a woman winner from Easton.
That's true. How many? Gosh, that is an interesting. We need to ask the tech staff in the back. How many female grand prize winners have we had in 17 years?
From
Hulai,
Easton.
Hulai.
Well, from Easton, Hulai won. Well, Amy Erickson, she got
Amy
the
Erickson,
first prize.
Yeah, 2 years.
You,
19.
Camille Preswadek,
Mm-hmm.
Good.
4. That might be
So
it.
yeah, but so and then you
4 out of 17. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And from Easton.
and from Easton.
Yeah.
And that was
awesome.
a beautiful painting too. I remember that painting. It's weird to talk about paintings on a podcast, but the way you captured the light there, really helped me understand as my plein air knowledge has grown. Not to get all like serious or whatever, but like really understand what it actually means to paint the light. I think it was coming through some sunflowers or something
Trees.
like that.
No,
trees.
Yeah.
Like a forest.
Really lovely painting. So anyway, Sara, welcome to the show.
So
Thank you.
let's back it up. We jumped all the way to her grand successes in
Right.
Easton. But Sara, have you always been a painter? Like from when you were a little girl, did you love art or
Yes.
not so much?
Yes, completely. My dad used to do these charcoal drawings or these pencil drawings and show them to me. I think he was copying something else, but he was good at it. And my mom was really talented with her hands too, so it was no surprise.
It was an artistic household.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I used to like to go down to and make little furniture for my dolls with my father in the workshop because I just liked making things. But I can remember when I was about 17 or 16, I was in the kitchen and I was painting my hero and heroine, which was Rudolf Nureyev and Margot Fonteyn. I was so in love with them that I was painting them.
Who were they?
They were really famous ballet stars
dancers.
from Russia. Yeah.
So you were already, but
And what were their names again? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Rudolf Nureyev
Okay.
and Margot Fonteyn.
so but you just like I have never felt inspired to just pick up a paintbrush and paint something. How did you even get to a space where you felt confident enough to do it? You just did.
Paint by number.
You started with paint by
Oh
number.
my God.
Stuff works.
I love it.
I was so in love with it. And I was talking to Bernie Delario, and he has the Last Supper that he did as a paint by number.
That's awesome.
It's like this big.
Yeah, I used to love the color in those things. I used to love it. Yeah.
I was so in love with that. So that was like just got me. After that, it was a no-brainer.
But that's such a cool,
Liquid
like
color.
that is a way that people like, we don't have to scoff at something like that. I think that is,
I
you know,
loved-
what a
loved
grand
it.
way to start like creating that muscle memory.
It was like the best gift that anybody ever gave me. I guess it was my parents. They must have known something to give me that particular thing.
How old were you?
Oh, it was just a little kid, probably. I mean, young. Like, I don't know, elementary school or something.
And then did you get a lot of art schooling, or like most of your early childhood or, you know, into your teenage years was just something that you were doing?
I took art in school, in high school. But that was it, pretty much. I didn't have any special classes or anything.
And did you go on to college or no?
I didn't go to college till I was 33.
Gotcha. So what did you do?
I went to Nova, Northern Virginia Community College,
Yep.
and took every single art course they had. And when I got done there, then we had moved to Maryland, and I started with I went to Montgomery College of Art, but then I switched over to their state, Maryland?
University of Maryland
Yeah.
system.
Well, just
No,
the community
their-
college system.
Their community college,
Yeah.
where Joe Mayer worked.
Oh, how
And Joe
cool.
Mayer was my teacher.
I love
Believe it
it
or not, he was my illustration teacher. So then I got into more.
But what made you all of a sudden say, I need to go back to art school? Like, I want to start learning.
Yeah, you
this.
just took regular classes in high school, and as any normal
Right.
person would, and
Yeah.
then waited to college to do it, to get into art.
You know, from when I graduated until I moved. Where was I? So until I moved to Virginia, when I was 33, I got married, had a child, had a divorce, moved to Berkeley, became a hippie.
Did you paint all the while, or did art
Yes.
kind of take a side?
No,
It
I
was always
painted.
present. You were
Yeah,
always
I was always painting something.
painting.
Yeah.
And so as you got yourself a little bit more grounded, then you started taking some more formal education about
Exactly.
painting.
And then once I got done with a lot of the formal stuff, which was I was in my mid-30s, then I started studying with particular artists that I admired for years.
Was there a point where you said, I'm a professional artist?
When I started making a pretty good living at selling them, I thought, okay, I guess I could say.
Talk about
There's
that.
no here, though. There's never a there, but,
Talk about that leap of faith, though. Like, how do you go from being a student to somebody who is selling? Like, what does that process look like?
Well, I was the assistant gallery director at the Art League in Alexandria for 10 years. And when I was there, I helped with every show. I met every judge. And I was taking classes there for years. And so it just glided in easily. They asked me to teach at some point because they knew I could do it. And then I just said, well, it's time. And I was getting into shows and stuff. So then I flipped over and left my job and started, painting, and was okay.
So you surrounded yourself with art and artists and
Yeah.
watched for a long time.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I loved being at the Art League. It was a wonderful time of my life. And that gave me confidence. And then I started winning some awards too. And then I was like, okay, I can do this. Actually, my husband urged me. He says, quit the job and just paint. And I'm like, so scary. I can't do it. And so I dragged my feet
Do you
for a
think
while.
that you would have made that leap without his encouragement?
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. But he just kind of kept pushing me. And so did Nancy Tankersley did too.
Yeah.
She was like, she's the one that got me into my first real studio to work in, which was in Arlington with her, where she was working. And I knew her from in other places that we knew each other. So she just urged me, and so did, and so did everyone around me.
I think that support must be very important in terms of making that leap. I mean, you're saying that you would have found your way on your own. I like that sense of confidence, but I also think about, okay, like people who are struggling in that space and wondering what to do, what differentiates who does it and doesn't,
It's huge.
Support
It's huge.
is part of it.
Is there, your path was, you just explained it. Was that a path, or was that just where life was?
It kind of like just where it took me. I mean, it was definitely a path. I mean, I definitely went to the Art League and said, this is where I want to be. I want to be around all this art.
Right.
I want to be watching these shows. And the woman that hired me became such a close friend. She was so wonderful. And she was so supportive of me. It was like incredible.
Well, I think that that's Sara Linda Poly's backstory is a good story. When did you get into Dillon, I guess, before we get back into the art?
That was way back.
That
Berkeley
was
days?
in the hippie period that she was trying to gloss over.
No, that was like in 1933 when I moved to Virginia.
Like, what was the style of your art when you were you somebody who was doing a lot of studio art? Was it more abstract? Like, was it more multimedia? Like, tell me about the evolution of your artwork.
It was all studio, and I painted at the Torpedo Factory because in the classroom once a week because I was working. I had a small child, and I was also doing illustration. I was doing ads and magazine articles and stuff. We had a small business back then, my husband and I, where we were like designing and illustrating things and stuff like that.
What was the Torpedo Factory like? For those, that was a big spot in DC.
Still is a big spot.
Still there.
And Joe Mayer, who was associated, was Nancy in the Torpedo Factory?
No, I don't think so.
No, he was never.
What was that
part of
vibe like? Is there anything like that around? Besides it,
I have never come across anything that I felt was equal to the Torpedo Factory. I didn't want to work there though, because it was like working like a fish in
right. You don't.
in a tank, where everybody's coming and watching you all the time and you have no private
space.
I didn't want to do that. I did get in there as an artist, but I didn't want to do that. But I'm sorry, back to your question.
Oh, no, I just was curious about the Joe Mayer. In other words, when Jess asks, your style was different. What were you learning at that time through these
landscape?
Okay.
I was totally into landscape because I lived in the West a lot and I travel a lot in the West, and so I was in love with.
You've
the
been
landscape.
drawn to landscapes the whole while.
Yeah,
then.
I still am.
Right,
Yeah.
that is the core of what you want to
Absolutely. Yeah, nature. Yeah.
Can you do other stuff? Obviously, you can.
I did portraits for a while. I've done lots of other stuff here and there, but never very much.
None of it speaks to you the way the landscape does.
Nothing.
What's that? What
the
is
light and the mountain and the sky. I mean, even as a kid, I was always looking at the sky, and it's funny because my sister she was always looking at the ground and finding money. I never found any money.
That's great.
Because I was always like, my head was always in the clouds, and it still is, unfortunately. Yeah.
I love it. So landscapes are your calling, and tell me about how you moved from the studio to painting in plein air, and how much of the artwork that you create now is in the studio versus plein air.
Well, I was invited by Ross Merrill and Ed Cooper to join the Washington Society of Landscape Painters. This was over 20-some years ago. And Barbara Nuss, all of them were doing that. And so they asked me to join, and I got in. And I won an award, actually, right away. And I loved it. I loved the people, loved the idea of it, and they paint once a month. You have to paint with them at least a couple times a year, once a month. We would go out and paint, and I fell in love with it. But when I started doing it, I was like floored. I thought, this is too hard. I've lost all my skill.
Because of the speed by which you have to make choices, the changing light. Like what felt daunting to you?
Was it frustrating?
Oh yeah, it was so frustrating. So for about the first year of trying to do it, I almost like just threw it out. I was like, I've been painting all this time in the studio and I know what I'm doing, and here I am feeling like a kindergartner.
And when you were painting in the studio, were you painting from reference photographs or from your brain or some combination of both?
Both.
Like
a combination, yeah. And so, but then as I learned it and got it, I was so in love because I love being outside. I've been hiking and camping a lot of my life, and that's my love too. So I was able to be outside and doing what I loved at the same time. To me, that was incredible. And then Plein Air Easton came along, and some other plein air events, and I was doing the circuits like in California and all those, and they were pretty daunting at first, but I learned so much. It was so beautiful. And then, at the same time, Plein Air Easton was happening. It started, and I got in pretty quickly along with my friends because we were the ones that have been painting a lot of plein air.
Right.
And I was so in love with that. I have pictures of myself painting like over by the little waterways around here. And I was like, you could just see it on my face. I was in heaven. I loved the competition part of it, and I loved everything about it. It was just amazing. And I still lived in Virginia. So it took me a few years. Nancy moved here, and Nancy and I have been friends for forever. Can't even remember. And Nancy moved here, and I was already doing Plein Air Easton, so I figured, wow, I'll just be even closer to it, plus I'll be in that cute little town. But we were trying to figure out whether we should move here, and we were eating at the old Masons one night, and it was right before Christmas, and these little snowflakes were coming down, and they had those little lamps were back when they were like a warmer color.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at each other and we went, oh my God, let's move here. And we're like, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And we did it.
That's just so great. That's so great.
It's so funny.
So 11 years ago, Plein Air Easton is 17 years old. Sara has been part of it the entire time, it sounds like.
I think I've done 14 out of 17. Because one of the times I didn't get in, but then they called me. I was in Italy, and somebody called me and said, can you get back here and like fill this spot? And I'm like, oh, okay.
It can happen to you too. We do often, I would say most years we end up calling up one or two alternates from our list because something happens, like it doesn't work out for somebody. So you can get that call up to the majors or whatever late in the game.
So I think if I counted right, I think it was 14, but I haven't actually counted.
And you've won a whole heck of a lot of awards at Plein Air Easton as well.
We're getting ready to take a break right now. If you heard the name Nancy Tankersley and Joe Mayer in this podcast, they are wonderful artists, very influential in the region for sure and in other parts of the country. Their work is available online just simply by Googling their name. Jess and I will be back in just a few minutes with more from Sara Linda Poly.
We'll just call her Sara.
You can just call me Sara.
On Friday, October 1st, 2021, when the sun rises upon the Colorado National Monument, have your paint set up and ready to go for the first session of Paint Out West, a virtual painting workshop conducted by Chris Kolupski. Stream this multi-class event from the comfort of your own studio as Chris demonstrates plein air painting from the Colorado National Monument, Arches National Park, Canyonlands, Zion, and Monument Valley. Chris will explain each step of his process and include magnified views of his color mixing and brush application. You can paint along with him in real time or replay classes later and pause to practice. Afterward, send a photo of your work and receive critique. This is a one-of-a-kind opportunity for you to paint the great American West without the cost of travel and lodging. Spots are limited, so don't miss out. Visit chriskolupski.com to register. That's CHRISKOLUPSKI.com to register.
Welcome back to the Plein Air Easton Podcast. This is Tim Wagon with Jess Bellis. And Sara, we want to talk about your advice that you would give painters and that sort of thing, and Jess is going to sort of lead that. But I think just listening to your story, there's a lot of advice in there. Would that be, you seem to just surround yourself with art, and it led you to where you are.
Yeah, and are you talking about people that are just getting into the...
People who are like you at the same age, and you're I don't know if I'm really good at this. I know this is something I want to do, but I'm not, I think it's
You have to do it for yourself. You can't do it for somebody else. You think you have to do it for somebody else a lot of times, like your galleries or because that's how when you get to a point where you're making your living at it, it's real different than when you start and you're just having fun, To keep that alive and still run a business is very challenging. So you have to look at it in a lot of different ways. You can't just look at it like in a childish way of like, oh, this is so much fun, obviously. But I think it's important to keep your eye on what's in your heart as far as what you want to paint and why you're doing it. Intention has a lot to do with it. What is your intention? Ask yourself, what is my intention? For this piece or for my life in the arts. I think when I get stuck sometimes, and I don't get stuck too much anymore, I get tired sometimes when a lot of things in life I have to deal with a lot of things, and I just feel like maybe I should go into semi-retirement, which I guess I'm kind of doing because it's just so much energy, and I want to work harder on my work. So I think what I tell my students is, first of all, it's really good to do a series of things I found that if you hop from one thing to another, the momentum that you built up on the idea that you originally had about, like, say it was a landscape or something, and then you pop over and start doing something else. Sometimes if you stay with that momentum and do another piece that is related to it, or maybe a couple of them, so that you can, it's kind of like that it supports that idea. Sometimes that's the right thing. Maybe not always.
You're talking about when you get stuck. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. When you're working on a piece and you're like, I can't seem to resolve this.
If you find yourself or your students in a place where they are feeling uninspired or stuck, like if you're in a rut, or you, like, I think about like writer's block, or, you can sit in front of your blank computer with your hands poised, ready to type, and you're like, I just don't even know how to start this. And what would be your advice to someone who's finding themselves in that space?
What I do, I have lots of quotes that I have pasted all over my room. That I love, like by Richard Schmidt, and people that I really admire. And I have their quotes so that I can turn around and kind of look at them and remind myself of my life in the arts and what it means. That's a more higher, and I meditate. So that is more higher consciousness way of dealing with that. But I also, as a practical thing, I think, put it aside and take your time. It's not really a race. And I think that a lot of times I've gotten stuck in that, like, oh, I have to finish this. If I don't finish this, I can't go on to the next thing. Oh, yes, you can. And there was a piece I turned it around for a year. I could not resolve that baby, and it was driving me nuts. So I turned it around, and I never looked at it again for a year. I went on to do other things and grew a year's worth of... I grew a year.
Perspective, skill.
Yeah, everything.
Right.
And then I turned it around and I went, oh, of course. I see it. What's wrong with it? Immediately. And I just went in and fixed it. I threw it. This was back when I worked at the Art League. I fixed it. I threw it into a show. It got an award, sold right away. And, and I was just laughing because that was, to me, was a horrible painting.
But so what you did was you gave it space you gave it the space it needed to
and myself
complete.
Too, yeah. Right. And so that's one way. Another way is just pick up a book by an artist that you admire and get inspired, or go. I have lots of things on my computer. All my favorite artists are on there. They have their little folders, and I can go in there and kind of look at their work and kind of get into their head a little bit and think, oh, here's another thing I've done that's been really useful. I don't do it anymore, but back in the day when I was more in a different kind of growth space, I would look at a painting of somebody that I totally admired and thought this painting is incredible, okay? So, look at the process, and then I would take my own vision, I would take my own photo or sketch or whatever it was that I was working with, and I would say, how would this person have painted this? And then I would proceed to try to paint it the way that person would have painted it. And then that would help me to learn what they did. I'm not saying that whether the piece even turned out that as well as I expected, but I learned a lot from just imagining what they did.
Tim is an actor. It's kind of like getting into character.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of similarities for sure.
Right. It's like kind of fake it till you make it.
Right.
A little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, acting in the mirror, or looking at a performance and sort of copying it to see what they did, and then kind of making it your own. Yeah, that's exactly right. Are you still learning?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Can you still learn a new stroke?
If I wasn't still learning, I might as well give up the brush. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
But it's something even as simple as like a new stroke. I mean, literally, because I'm sure when you're painting these things, you're learning how they holding the brush and how much pressure they put on the brush.
And a new kind of brush, with a little bit different bristles, or a new knife. I love working with a knife part of the time. I like working with both. So, get me a new knife or some kind of new tool, and throw that into the mix, or just softer edges, or it's like, I'm constantly learning, and even the piece that I'm working on teaches me so much, because sometimes I'm like 3/4 of the way through, and I'm like, no, you're not. This is not right. There's something wrong here, and come on, tell me what do you need, and so
you started telling us kind of a funny story about your experience this year at Plein Air Easton, and I will say that Sara won one of our Judges' Choice Awards, which was a new award category that we sort of put into place this year because we really pride ourselves in listening to feedback from our judges and from our artists. And one thing that had been sort of expressed to us over years from our judges is that we have so many different categories in our awards that are specific to content, like our farming award or our Waterman's award. And there have been some years where judges have said, I don't have, people are winning major awards with paintings, and other paintings that are better paintings are really being overlooked because they don't fit into your categories. So they felt like, after they choose first, second, and third, like the fourth and fifth best painting might not fit in so carefully into a best maritime category. And to have like a honorable mention felt so like other, here's a little token when maybe it's one of the best paintings in the entire show. So we really put some resource into trying to give the judges a few more awards to be able to say, this is actually a really great painting. And so Sara won one of those awards. So you were telling me...
What was the award? I didn't even know that.
A judge's choice.
Award.
So I think that there were 3 Judges' Choice Awards that replaced our honorable mention. And again, we really want to change the way that we talk about those awards so that we're not like, these are other. Like, really, these are probably one of the best paintings in the entire show. They're just not, again, they don't necessarily, they're not of a boat, or they might not be of a, farm or, an architectural painting. I mean, I think that and Sara, you can probably speak to this, when you're in a competition space, it drives you differently than when you're just painting for a gallery show. You have to sit there and think to yourself, am I painting for an award? Am I like trying to paint something that's super saleable? Am I what is your, like you said, what's your intention? What's your intention?
What is my intention?
What is your intention at this event? Is it to sell through all your inventory? Is it to win the grand prize? Are you trying for the best Renaissance painting award? Like, I think there are people who are very calculated about, some people just show up and paint.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of award winners who come in with real intention.
Yeah. My intention's always the same thing. I want to do the best I can, and I never think about, I'll try to get this award or that award. I just never think. When I won that big award, I was so taken aback. I mean, I didn't even know what to do or what to say. I didn't get it even. Like, how'd that happen? Because certainly wasn't my intent.
So you didn't know, like, this is a question that I always wonder. Like, sometimes when I've talked to artists, they knew they had a really great painting.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know you had a really great, the year you won the grand prize, were you like, dang, I really nailed it this year?
I felt like I nailed it for myself. I felt that my intention came out great. Like, I knew.
It was a strong painting.
It was strong for me. I mean, I had this idea about how I wanted to use the knife and the brush and how I wanted to show the light coming through, because I had been working, that's what I had been working on over the last year or so, was light coming through the trees. That was like my thing. It still is one of my things. So I just wanted to further that. And all I did was sit on the bike trail. I mean, I never went anywhere. And I never go anywhere. I always stay in Easton and just find one or two things and paint them all week.
Yeah.
I'm not like a person that runs around a lot. And
you had been studying the technique, and you were like, I'm going to try to get this.
Yeah. And I wanted to make it the very best that I had done yet, with that particular combination of tools and ideas. That was what was the high point. And so I not in a million years would I have thought I was. But I wasn't thinking about that.
When you're painting that light and you're trying to get it to come through, because that is where my sort of eye has been trained over 17 years, is to look for in paintings. Isn't that really just white paint?
No.
Not at all, Tim.
See, hey, look. No. Hey, you never know unless. Yeah. What is it?
It's tricky a little. I mean, you have to think about it, and you have to remember, like when the sun's coming through the leaves, it turns the leaves like bright orange and reds and yellows, but in a certain way. You got to like look at that a lot and say like, well, and then what do you put down first? Well, you don't really want to put down the dark first, because even though you usually put the dark first down when you paint, because you want to feel like you're looking through the darker part into the lighter part, which is behind.
That's trippy right there. It's a little trippy.
Yeah, so like,
Berkeley hippie days there.
Right, Sarah. It is just, I mean, you have to think that through. So there was a lot of ways to think that through. There was a thinner layer, there was a thicker layer, then there was using the knife, and then I just pulled the knife straight down over all the paint, just went like, whoosh, like that, almost like I was erasing it, and it was like, whoa, I love that. I was experimenting. That's it. I mean, you have to experiment.
That's something that I remember from the Jill Basham interview too, that really resonated with me, is that you have to keep trying the new thing. You have to keep trying and experimenting.
Yeah, like, where can I take this? Okay. And boy, there's nothing more boring or flatten your work faster than being bored with your work, or saying, oh God, I've done this so many times, I can't, do that again or something.
So this year at Plein Air Easton, you went out to try to do two big competition pieces, or big for you.
Big for me is 20 by 20 is for me is huge outside.
It's big. But that was your intention.
That was my intention.
My intention was I'm going to paint two big for me, fabulous Sara Linda Poly paintings.
Right, and that's all I was going to do.
Yep.
Except I wanted to do a couple 6x8s because I wanted to put it in the small painting show. So I had done one little 6x8 of a sunset, and then I'd pretty much finished my first 20 by 20. I was happy with it. So I kind of put it aside, and I started working on this other one they had started, and it just went south on me. I got too much paint too fast. I got too much, and I got into the knife. I was
even a grand prize winner can have a bum painting day.
Oh my God! Oh, always. And so I think what happened was I started to get nervous. Like, oh my God, I only have like a couple days, left to work on this.
You got in your head about it.
And then it was starting to dry, and I couldn't really get. Because when I'm doing a piece that's a 20 by 20, I have to keep visiting the scene like a million times, because the light changes so
changing.
fast. So you run out of days pretty quickly, and if after a few days you're not feeling satisfied, you're thinking,
You're not in the groove. If you're not in the groove, you're really in trouble.
But I said, wow, I've put already like several days into this painting, so I guess I have to put it in. I guess it's not terrible, but I really didn't. I wasn't satisfied. Wasn't proud. And so it was, this is not an exaggeration. It was 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes before I had to bring him in the day we were bringing them in. And it wasn't, and it was near the time. It was like 10 o'clock. We had to have him there by 11 or something.
Yeah.
And I looked at that painting. I sat there and I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not putting it in. So, and then let me bounce back to what happened. A couple of nights before that, Nancy and I and Diane all went down to the point, to Easton Point to paint. It was a lovely night. The sun was going down behind the trees. Nancy was painting a boat and Diane was painting something. And this woman came, this lovely woman comes and sits down like in front of me and starts fishing. And this heron is sitting beside her about like 12 feet away watching her. So when I saw that sun, I know from being there so often that the sun would go down, would go behind the trees, and a little piece of it would come across the water. I've seen it so many times, and I said, I've always wanted to paint that. I'm just going to whack that out. You know what I mean? It took me less than an hour to paint it, and it painted itself. I was so excited, and it was such a lovely night. The whole thing was all right. Everything was, and this woman it was it was so funny. So she would get these fish and she would throw it to the heron.
Oh my gosh.
The heron would jump up and its wings would go flying, and then it would go in this S-curve thing to try to get it into its stomach.
Oh my
You know
gosh.
how they do?
Yes.
And then it would stand straight back up again. This all happened in seconds. It straightened back and it would start, and it just turned around and stared at her again.
Like a pet.
I love
And this
it.
happened 4 times. And I found out her name. And I was laughing. I said, this guy, he's like really likes you, You should name him. So she named him Herman, the heron.
I love it.
And her name was Brenda.
What was the name of the painting?
All is
So anyway, so you painted that painting.
All
and
is
that,
quiet.
All
now.
is quiet.
All is quiet now. And it was so quiet. And then all her family came and they all gathered around her and they were all quietly talking. It was such a beautiful scene. It was so, I don't know, family oriented and it was happening right in front of me. So as I was painting, I kept looking over there. And when she'd catch a fish, she'd go, okay, I'm throwing it. And
I love it.
Oh, okay. And I'd watch her feed the heron and then I'd go back to the painting. And all this happened in less than an hour. And it was and that was the painting that I had left over.
The one thing I want to back up and just say is she's being flip and she's saying, I just painted this painting in just an hour. The painting painted itself. And like what she is not referencing is, or what I would draw attention to is just how often she had observed the sun going down in just that same way. Like you already had in your head the composition that you wanted.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't just happen. That is with intent.
No.
That is with like being aware of and planning in your brain, being aware, soaking in that context and the hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of classes that she took to be able to capitalize on that light in an hour. So I always want to point out when people are like, oh, she just did that in an hour. It's like, oh, honey, you have no idea how many hours went into making that hour possible.
It's like the person that comes up behind you and says, how long did it take you to paint that? And the typical response is, well, about 30 years in an hour.
Right, exactly.
Because that was and I had looked at that over the years. I'd looked at that scene. I'd watched that exact sun.
You knew exactly how that sun was going to behave.
And how it went across the water. And I saw that painting before I ever did it on the canvas perfectly, So anyway.
So I
put that one in.
Right.
And Nancy said, you're going to get an award for that. And I went, oh, come on. It's a sketch. It's practically a sketch, but it's, anyway.
I think that is a great sort of advice piece that we could end it on, which is you should trust your gut, right?
Totally.
And you should put forth the work that you feel proud about. And you don't need to feel the pressure of other people who are painting even bigger than 20 by 20 to make you think that you need to put your best work forward.
Right. Bigger isn't always better.
No. And your gut does tell you mostly what you should do, right?
For me, it does, yeah. And I knew, as I was doing that other piece that I knew what my original intention was, but it wasn't going there.
You weren't hitting it.
And I had to, that happens all the time. So you got to, be aware of.
Sarah, just one more quick question before we end this, because we do have to wrap this up. But it based on one of the first things you said in the interview, which was, I just love painting light. I love being, when I was a child, painting the light, and light's everywhere. It's all. I mean, you can't. I mean, for most people, for the fortunate people, and are there scenes where you just walk by? I would never want to paint that. That's just does or do you want to paint everything? If you're drawn to this sort of like,
I'm not drawn to everything.
Right.
Very specific, I think. I like the sky. So I mean, like when I was a kid, I was always watching the clouds. I wasn't so aware of how the light came through things. That was afterward, after I became more in tune with what I was doing. But I was always looking at the sky, and the sun. So I love sunsets and sunrises. I can paint almost all of them. But no, I mean, like, I know some people do like a wonderful job of a really ordinary scene, and they take it and they make it like amazing. But I'm just not drawn so much to those, like an indoor scene or something like that. I'm just drawn more to nature and big skies and things like that, big nature things.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
I love it. Sara, thank you for everything that you continue to do to be a great ambassador for Plein Air Easton, and thank you for all the beauty that you put into the world and our landscape. I've enjoyed your paintings for so long. You just make such beautiful work, so thank you.
And thank you for letting me paint so many times here.
Well, unfortunately, I want to just clarify that I have absolutely nothing to do with who gets to paint here.
Let me rephrase that. Thank you for organizing such an amazing opportunity for people like me.
That's fair for Jess now, Susie, and Marie, and
Marie.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It is certainly my pleasure. It is a blast. We love it as much as you do. It
shows.
Thanks, Sara. Thanks for coming in.
Once again, it's been Sara Linda Poly.
For the record,
if you don't know, now you know.
Now you know.
The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the Eastern Shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. The Plein Air Easton Podcast is produced by Nick Richards. Our theme music was generously provided by Blue Dot Sessions, with additional episode music by Scott Gratton. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. You can learn more about Plein Air Easton at pleinaireaston.com.